Welcome to Stock Option Counsel. I'm Mary Russell, and I'm an attorney, and I counsel individuals on their stock options and other equity compensation. I especially work with individuals who are joining startup companies, and they're curious to know what would be the right equity offer for this position, and is there anything in the fine print here or tax structuring that they should think about to maximize the value of the equity. So I'm here to talk about early stage startup offers today. When I say early stage startup, I mean a startup that has not had a significant funding round, like a Series A funding round. It's just a sort of a unique spot in a startup's history. The most unique part of joining an early stage startup is that you might have an opportunity to have a significant ownership percentage in the company. You couldn't join Pinterest today and get 1% in an offer for an employee level, but if you joined when it was at the early stage, that might have been on the table. So you want to think about your contribution to the company, and one way to think about it is that they're going to have an equity pool that's budgeted just for equity grants to employees and executives at this stage. So between their very first seed money and their Series A, they'll have a certain budget for equity ownership. So one way to think about what would be the right offer is what portion of that equity pool, based on my relative contribution and seniority and importance to the growth in the value of the company, should be allocated or granted to me if I'm joining. Another important point about joining an early stage startup is that the equity can be structured in a very favorable way that can allow the individual to take advantage of capital gains tax rates, which are lower than ordinary income tax rates when they eventually sell the shares, and perhaps even qualified small business stock tax rates, which are the lowest that you can have under federal law. Right now it's possible that you could even have 0% tax rates at the federal level for startup shares if you meet all the requirements. So the tax design is very, very important at this stage because you have the opportunity for such favorable outcomes if it's done right. The main structure that you're going to want to see is a purchase of restricted stock or the early exercise of a non-qualified stock option, and then following that with the filing of an 83B election. To do this, you're going to have to invest the exercise price of the option or the purchase price of the restricted shares up front. So that's available to people in an early stage startup because the fair market value of those shares or the purchase price or exercise price is going to be quite low because the company hasn't had significant financing or success in the growth of the value of the company. The next thing people want to think about is the rights on the shares. So are there any red flag terms in the fine print that would limit the value of the shares? Most importantly, we look for repurchase rights or clawbacks for vested shares. That means in most cases it would mean if you leave the company before there's an exit event, the company can buy back your vested shares, even your vested shares, for some price. Usually they say the fair market value at the time that you leave the company. This is not a classic startup term. It's very unusual, and you can see why, because it limits the value and individuals don't want to work for shares that they don't get to own after they purchase them and vest them. But I do see it, and if you see it in an early stage startup stock documents, this is the time when it's most negotiable. In most cases, it's included there because the startup legal counsel has included it in the startup's equity plan. And the founders may not know it's there or understand how much it affects the value for the employees or key hires, and may not understand that it's off market or unusual for startups. And so this is a time when it's most negotiable in the hiring process. So you want to make sure that you know about this before you sign the offer letter and join, but negotiate these types of details and terms before you come on board. So again, I'm Mary Russell. I counsel individuals on their equity offers. I often work with people on the question of how much equity is fair at a company, and within the documents, the key legal terms and tax structures to make sure that individuals can get the most out of their equity offer. I'd be happy to hear from you at stockoptioncounsel.com. Thank you.